Hey everybody, how's it going? Forrest here again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorales. Today we're going to be looking at Freut euch ihr Christen, which roughly translates to Rejoice, all you Christians. It's a really awesome chorale. I'm excited to get started and analyze it. So let's start off by identifying the key. Interestingly enough, the key signature reflects E flat major, but we're very clearly in the key of F minor or A flat major. And I think this is an artifact of Renaissance composition that came from the transposition of the modes. And when the modes were being transposed, they didn't write the key signature in its entirety. They wrote a part of it, like the consistent part, and then they would add the additional flat that came from the mode being transposed. So I don't have much more information about it than that. I'd have to go back to my notes from my Renaissance music class that I took during my master's, but it's still really fascinating that it made its way this far into the tonal period. Even though, the Baroque is the front end of that period, I'm still thinking at this point pretty much tonal harmony was almost codified to the point where composers sort of knew the way that harmony, we had functional harmony basically at this point is what I'm willing to hedge my bets on. But that being said, I am going to have to do a paper swap halfway through the video, or a little less than halfway through the video, but I'm going to try and make it seamless. That being said, Freut euch ihr Christen, we start in the key of F minor, and we start on a 1 chord, an F minor triad. Then we immediately get an A major. We have this rising motive in the tenor. It's really beautiful. A flat A, B flat C. This is a secondary dominant, and again with this voicing of the 7th of the chord in the bass. This is an F7 triad, and that would be 5 of 4. And in minor keys, 5 of 4 sounds a lot starker in comparison to major keys when you have a 5 of 4, because it's you're turning the minor triad into a major triad as opposed to keeping the major triad the same. That being said, it immediately goes to a 4-6 chord, a B flat minor triad in first inversion, and then we get a 1-6-4 chord. This is an F minor triad in second inversion. It's part of a passing figure as the bass is going down and the tenor is going up, creating this big distance between the lower voices. We then get an interesting figure where the alto and the soprano meet. We get this 2 chord, a 2-7 chord in first inversion. We're basically getting prepared for a cadence. So this is a 2-6-5. If you choose to include that F as part of it, even though it's a very fleeting moment, this is a 5 chord, and then we go to a 1 chord. I forgot to mark this neighbor tone right here as well. That being said, we have another non-chord tone here. We have a lot of counterpoint going on here, so I'm leery of marking what is a passing tone and what's a non-chord tone. Here, these all seem part of the same figure where the 2 and the 5 sort of bleed into one another and create, counterpoint. But the idea is that we have a tonal cadence coming, and that's really what matters, is that you know that. So then we have another 1 chord. We have 3 1 chords in succession. I guess you can kind of consider all of these the sort of same chord. And we then have, coming up here, D flat, G, B flat. That is a 2 chord in first inversion, a 2-6. But because we're preparing for a modulation to A flat, I think I'm just going to go ahead and use all this awesome extra space that I have at the bottom. I'm going to cherish it while I have it, and say that we're modulating right here, and that is instead turning into a 7-6. Then we modulate. Then we've modulated at this point. That's what I'm saying. We get an A major. So instead of 3, we have 1-6, a passing tone, and then we have 5-3. Right? It's just another A major, or I said A major, I meant A flat major triad, but the bass has changed. We then have another 2-6-5 chord, but this time in major. And sort of the same thing is going on here, where he goes, instead of up and then down, he goes down and then up. They're very similar figures where the rhythms look very similar between here. We have a passing tone. It's basically a 5 chord. You could even go as far to call it a 5-7 chord, because this passing tone would be the 7th, but I'm just going to call it a 5 chord because that's the moment that I'm analyzing it on, right on beat 2. And then on beat 3, we get a 1 chord. These are both perfect, authentic cadences. Then I think we're getting ready for a move back to F minor, because we're going to have a last perfect authentic cadence over here in the key of F minor. And we're going to call this A flat a 3 chord in the key of F minor. This D flat is now 6. 3 wants to go to 6. And then we have a 2-6 chord. 6 wants to go to 2, so this is all making sense so far. Oh, sorry, I think I marked the wrong note here, because we're looking for the C is like an accented non-chord tone. We're actually looking at this B flat here for guidance. B flat, D flat, G, B flat. That's a 2-6 chord, and it's diminished now because we're thinking in terms of not A flat, but F minor. Sorry, my handwriting is abysmal today. I'll try to improve. We then have a C7 chord. That would be a 5-7 in root position. That immediately goes again to a 6 chord in anticipation for the cadence. Bach kind of fakes this out. And again, with another 2-6-5 chord, and remember, these are half diminished because the distance between G and F is a minor 7th, so that's how we know it's a half diminished triad as opposed to a fully diminished triad. And again, with the counterpoint, it makes it kind of difficult for us to identify exactly where the chords are happening because everything's bleeding together. We even get like hints of tonic happening during the dominance, so the voices are arriving at a cadence at the same point, but others have more distance to go or arrive a little bit earlier with anticipations and ornaments and stuff. But we end up getting a 2-5-1 cadence that's, like I said, kind of the lines are blurred, as is the case with contrapuntal music. Let's go ahead and move over to the next page. So actually one last time we have F minor, A flat major, back to F minor, 3 perfect authentic cadences, and I'm going to grab the second sheet here. We're going to move on. And again, we're going to have another cadence here in the key of A flat major, but this time, remember, we have a C in the soprano, so this is not a perfect authentic cadence, it's imperfect. And the cadence is just fine, that's just the terminology that is associated with it. So if we say that we've modulated to the key of A flat here, but we treat this as if we were in F minor, we would say that this is 5 of 4. But now if we're thinking in terms of A flat major, this is 5 of 2. And Bach is doing sort of like a falling fifths sort of figure here, like a sequence. You usually associate sequences with the Baroque period, as it was a really popular device that composers used to get through music and to explore harmony. And one of the substitutions you can do for, what would that be? 6, no, what would that be? One of the things that you can do instead of using a 6 chord, it would be 5 of 2, and that's just turning the minor 6 into a major chord. That's effectively all that's happening, just a substitution. And we have some passing tones going on. And remember, these are just chord tones, and all that's happening on beats 2 and 4 is that the chord is getting inverted. So we get 5 of 2, that goes to 2, and then again it gets inverted. We have a passing tone there. And then 2, instead of going, it actually goes exactly where we expect it to go. It goes to a 5 chord, which would be an E flat major triad, because remember, we're thinking in terms of A major here, or A flat major. Sorry that I keep making that mistake. So 5, 6. We have a passing tone in the alto here. We have like imitation going on. This is the first time that imitation's been very blatantly obvious between the voices in any of the chorales that I've looked at so far. So that's really exciting. And then we get a cadence on 1. So we just get a long sort of 6-2-5-1 cadence here. And remember, 5 of 2 is really just a substitution for 6. They're the same chord, just one is major and one is minor. That being 6. So it goes from F minor versus F major. They're just substitutions for one another. Okay, so now we're getting ready for a perfect authentic cadence in a strange key, B flat minor, which is adjacent to A flat major on the circle of fifths, because D flat is adjacent to A flat on the circle of fifths, and B flat is the relative minor to D flat major. So we're going to say that the modulation happens on the next beat. So 1 wants to go to 4 via this falling fifths figure. But if we go to B flat minor, D flat major turns into the 3. Then we have a passing tone. And now that we're thinking in terms of B flat minor, that 3, which turns into 6. Then we have B flat F, B flat D flat. That's a 1 chord. That's just a B flat minor triad. And 6, again, this idea of where the chord gets inverted on the weak beats. And then we go to, again, another 2-6 chord, which turns into 5-3 on this beat. And again, we sort of have like this split idea where in the key of B flat, we have E flat, G flat, C, B. It's actually a 2-6-5 because we have this second here. When you see a second spell, that's pretty much a dead giveaway that one of two things is happening. Either there's a suspension happening or the chord has a 7th chord. And in this case, it's a 7th chord. And then it goes to a 5 chord. You could, like I said, even go as far as saying it's a 5-7, where we see the 7 again going down in the tenor to a 1 chord. Very good. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and prepare for the next cadence, which is a cadence in F minor. And again, that's a tip that I have for anyone who's doing analysis for a class, or whether you're doing analysis for your own work and you're like just looking at a piece. One thing that I like to do is go from cadence to cadence, because by the time you get to a cadence, you know that you've either modulated, or you know you have an idea as to what the harmony is doing at any given time. So I jump ahead to the cadence to look at what key we're going to guide, to identify the fact that, okay, well, I need to be looking for a point in which a modulation would happen so that it can guide my analysis. I'm going to go ahead and just say that we've modulated to F here, and this is just a pivot chord because we already get E natural in the next beat. So we're going to call this 4 of F minor, because all B flat minor is the subdominant of F minor. And then we immediately go again to a 5-4-2 chord. We've seen a 5-4-2 chord before. It was actually the second chord that we saw, but it was 5-4-2 of 4. So we actually saw 5-4-2 of B flat minor on beat 2. Actually, just bring the paper in front just to remind you all again. 5-4-2 of 4. And now we're seeing the other way around. We're seeing 5-4-2 in the key of F minor. So that's kind of cool that Bach did that. And then we have a 1-6 chord. That's just an F minor triad in first inversion. And that goes to a 2 chord. G, G, F. Sorry, I said 2 Gs. What am I talking about? G, B flat, F. That's actually up for debate. I'm going to say that this is, instead of a 1 chord, this is a 7-6 chord, and that this F right here is an accented, like an, it wouldn't be an anticipation, it'd be the opposite of an anticipation. It would be delaying the chord tone. So this E, I think, right here is a 7-6 chord. Makes this a 7-6 chord, because all this is just an E diminished triad in first inversion, and that goes to 1, which is much more common than 1-2-1, I would say. Even though, like I said, like I've said in the past, the chords are a third apart. So chords that are a third apart are common by 2 tones. So 1 and 2 are there, except for the 7 has the leading tone and the 2 doesn't. So that's the difference between the two of them. That being said, that 1 chord goes to a 2-6-5. Again, Bach really loves these 2-6-5 chords where he has the second in the soprano and the alto, and they split where the soprano stays the same. And that goes to a 5 chord, as you would expect. Passing tone, you could even call that the 7th, like I've said before. And that goes to a 1 chord. And right here is the beautiful moment in the chorale for me. When I was listening to this originally, I'm like, oh, he gets to a half cadence in C major. Or no, rather, he gets to a half cadence here, and he cadences on the dominant in anticipation for the modulation back to F minor to end the piece. But no, he actually goes back to A flat before that. So I think that instead of this fragment here, that if you look out of context, it's just an F Dorian scale, which is interesting. F, G, A flat, B flat, C, not D flat, but D natural, E flat, F. So this is a Dorian fragment. It's just the Dorian mode, the F Dorian mode. So we're thinking in terms of E flat here. I'm going to say that he actually goes to C minor here. And this 4, this 1 is 4. Like, kind of like how originally when we were modulating to B flat, or modulating back to F, B flat was 4, and that was our common tone. Now we're going to C, and now F minor is 4. So we can call this 4 chord, just a 4 chord, and this is 6 again. And it's the same thing that he kind of does, but that he does earlier. But instead of going back down and arpeggiating, he just continues up this scale run, which is really interesting. And then we get a 1 chord, 4 going to 1, because now we're thinking in terms of C minor, 6. So we have an F minor triad, a C minor triad, and then we're going to work our way down into the last system. Here we have G, C, A flat, D, and G. So it's kind of interesting, what's going on here. This D, this A, this C, this G. It's difficult to say exactly what's going on here because this D the D and the C don't really agree with one another. Like, are we thinking in terms of 5? Are we thinking in terms of 2? Are we thinking in terms of like a 1-6-4? I'm going to go ahead and call this a 1-6-4 in anticipation for a cadence, because this D I feel like is just part of this descending voice leading, but what's going on underneath it isn't entirely clear, because we have G, we have C, we have A flat, but this D sort of throws us for a loop, because we know that we have a 5 chord on the next beat, but what exactly is going on here? I don't think we fully know. I think I might just call it A flat G with the D. Like I said, I don't really know exactly what to call this. In my notes, I have a question mark marked underneath right here. We're just going to call this 1 here. We have a Picardy third, a perfect authentic cadence in C, but we cadence on C major rather than C minor. But the key, the melodic material afterwards indicates that C minor is the area. We're going to go ahead and call, well, what exactly is happening here? We have G in the bass. I think this is just like a big sort of like suspension beforehand, but the G and the C in the lower voices I think are what really carry it here, because this is just a neighbor tone. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and call this like a 1-6-4. Like a 1-6-4. That's what I'm going to call it. And we know sometimes we use this bracket notation underneath the 1-6-4 and the 5 to indicate that they're both part of the same unit, because they both all that's happening is the voices that are the only voice that's moving. See, this D would move down, or we would usually have an E flat here, and then that would move down to D, but this D stays consistent. So it's like this weird sort of like suspension going on. It's a very beautiful moment. It's interesting how Bach does that. But yeah, I don't really know what to make sense of it. Leave a comment if you have any ideas as to what might be going on. I'd be interested to hear someone else's input. But that being said, let's move on to the next beat. So I think we are in the process of modulating to A flat. So this 1 in A flat, or this 1 in C major, is now going to become the 3 of A flat major. The interesting thing is, actually, you know what we're going to call it is, instead of calling it a major 3, where did I put my eraser? Thought I saw my eraser somewhere. That's okay, I will not tarry with it for too long. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and instead of calling that 3, we're going to call that 5 of 6. 5 of 6, because C major is just 5, is just the dominant of F minor, and F minor is the 6. But instead of getting F minor, we get F major, which is 5 of 2 in the key of A flat major, which is interesting. 5 of 2. It is still the dominant of that chord, it's just 5 of 2. And then we get to D flat, A, F, D flat, which is interesting because instead of going to, or D flat, A, F, C, D flat, A flat, D flat, A, F, C. That is an interesting chord. We have a D flat augmented 7th chord, which is kind of interesting. We'll come back to that, but we're preparing for a cadence, a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A flat major. It's just like the fact that he has this like double note motif, that the chord that's happening underneath it kind of disagrees with what's going on. But this D flat, I think might actually be like a decoy just because it's going down the scale. If we take the C and the A flat and the F and the C, it goes to 6. Or no, it's just the same chord again. I'm so sorry. It does not go to 6 because remember we have the A natural twice here. B flat, F, B flat. Yes, this is just the same thing that's happening there. It just descends the scale until we get to the B flat minor chord, which is our 2. There we are. Okay, excellent. All that's happening here is that he's just extending the same chord over 2 beats. That's fine. And then the next chord that we get is A flat over C. That's just a 1/6 chord with a passing tone. We have some passing tones going on. Lots of chromatic movement, or lots of passing tone movement here. So if I forget some, I'm going to go back and mark them. And then we have E flat, F, A, or G, B flat. I think these are just non-chord tones right here. And that this is just E flat, G, B flat. And then we have, yeah, I think this is just a big 5 chord right here. And then we get the 7th introduced. I think that that's the only thing that changes. And then we go to a 1 chord. We go to a 1 chord. So it's just a big 5/7 over 1. We could even say that maybe there's like some ideas of 6 here, maybe even some ideas of 1/6/4. The idea is that there's just like a big dominant cadence getting preparing for a perfect authentic cadence, landing on the tonic with the tonic in the bass, or sorry, in the soprano. So now we are moving on to prepare for a cadence in the key of F again. We get a Picardy third. We can look ahead and see that we have an A major, or an A natural here. And I don't think that we've quite modulated yet because we have E flats going on. By the time we get to E naturals, I think that's when we've modulated back to F. But I think for the time being, we're still in the key of A flat major. So we have a D flat chord here. That's just 4. Passing tone, and then no change here. Just the figure that he uses lends itself so that we get the same chord on 2 beats. Another passing tone, and here we have B flat, F, B flat, D flat. That's just a 2 chord in root position. And then we have a 6th version of that same chord here. Again, he returns that same bass pattern that we've seen before. It's just beats 1 and 2 get a variation. And here we have E flat, G, E flat, B flat. That's just a 5 chord in the key of A flat. Some passing tones. You could even say E flat 7 right here with this passing tone. And then we get C, G, C, E flat. That's just a 3 chord. This is like a sequence going on. 4, 2, 5, 3. And you see the upper voices are sequencing. It's just the same thing, but diatonically transposed up a step. And then by the time we get to these E naturals, I think we're pretty clearly in the key of F minor, because instead of going from like 6 to 4, we're in F minor now, and that 6 would be considered 1 in the key of F minor. And then we get A, C, A, F. We just have we have a 1 chord here. We have more passing tones and whatnot going on. And then this is just 6 of the same chord. And if we take F, A, B flat, F, I think this is all just counterpoint that's going on here. But the chord does change back to 5/3 down here because the bass does change. And that's an accented chord tone, kind of like a suspension figure, or an accented non-chord tone rather. And then we have C, G, E. That's just 5. The bass leaps down, and then we get 1, a major 1, a Picardy third. That was a very hairy chorale to get through as well. Still right here, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here with this D, this G, this C, and this G. It's like a sus chord. I don't exactly know what the bass is. I think I don't exactly know what the root of the chord is. I think there's room for interpretation. All that really matters is that you know that there's a dominant cadence going on. But that being said, we have a pretty chorale here. Definitely my favorite chorale that we've looked at thus far. Definitely some room for interpretation regarding what the proper analysis where modulations occur. I'm really happy with this analysis. Not a lot of half cadences happening in the last couple of analyses that we've done together. I think it's interesting how this is actually the first chorale that doesn't have a repeat in it, which is really fascinating. And other than that, this rising bass moment right here, where he just modulates to C, sort of this like circle of fifths of modulations going on. It's a really beautiful moment, and I had to listen to it a couple of times because I not only was I not sure where the piece was going from an analytical perspective, but I needed to double check exactly you know, what exactly made that section so beautiful to me. Like, you know, even if I wasn't talking about analysis, it's like how would I describe what was going on there? And this just sounds like an F Dorian scale over like C minor. It's really nice. But that being said, thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for more analyses. There's a ton more coming up in the next year, I guess. It's going to take me a while to get through all of these, but I've been enjoying it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Happy New Year. Take care.